Hello there, today we're going to be learning how to make a shop. There's a few things that you'll need to know before we get started. Just to cover them real quick, we're going to need to know how to use the global table and also insert tables into that global table. Another thing that we're going to need is networking between the client and server. We're going to have a basic understanding of panels and VGUI, and also with loops and conditions for the most part. The setup that we have here so far is just a table. We have this tutorial shop table. It is global, it's not local, and whenever we initialize it, we check to see if it already exists. Otherwise, we make it an empty table. We're also including a theme inside this table, which has a background and text. And the reason why we have this is so we can easily customize our shop later on without having to really touch the code. If we go into our client-side file, I just have a basic menu set up here. We have a function that's stored on this global table here called open, and we are creating a D frame, and we're also storing that D frame in the tutorial shop menu if necessary. And then we have a console command here called tutorial_shop, and it runs the function that we created above. So if I go in game now and we just run this, you can see that we have our panel here. So this is that code right here, and inside the draw color we're getting the theme from our global table here. So this is just background, and then if we ever want some text or to draw some text, we can go ahead and get that there. One thing I realized that we're going to need is a font for our menu, so I'm going to go ahead and just steal this surface.create font, and I'm going to put this inside of our client side file here. I'm going to get rid of all this extra information that we don't need, and I'm going to name our font tutorial shop underscore, and we'll say it like 14. And I'm going to use the font Roboto. All right, so now that we have our font, I'm just going to go ahead and create a nice title for our menu. So I'm going to just call this shop, and then we're going to take our font here, which was tutorial shop underscore 14, and put this in the center on the X position, and we'll just put this 5% down of the height. Then our color for our text will be tutorial shop dot theme, and we'll index by the text. So that will be our color argument. Next is our X alignment. So I'm going to align this center and align the center on the Y alignment. So now if I go in game, I open this up, you now see we have shop. It's actually kind of small and it's not in the best position. So I'm going to change this to, for example, like maybe 24 for our title. Like that will be a bit better. Go back in game. Now you can see we got shop. Just going to scoot it down just a bit more. There we go. So here's our shop. One thing that we're going to need for our shop is a scroll bar. So we're going to be adding in a bunch of information here, a bunch of panels. So we need to get a scroll bar for that. So here's the scroll bar that we're going to be using. Here's an example here from the wiki. I'm actually just going to copy this here, and we're going to go ahead and paste that in into our code here. So we can go ahead and just change all of these to, let's just say scroll, make sure that we don't change. And then, we don't need any buttons right now, but we just need this scroll. And we're going to be using docking for this. And so essentially what docking is, this scroll is going to fill up the entire panel of possible space here. So this is going to take up all of our frame. Also, we need to change our parent to tutorial shop.menu. So this is, our scroll is going to be a child of tutorial shop.menu. Okay. Next thing we're going to need to do is actually structure our shop into what we're going to do. Right now, we're just going to support weapons, but you can easily add in support for things such as entities, yada, yada, yada. It just all depends on your structure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say tutorial shop dot items equals a table. And so this is going to be a table of items, and each thing is going to have a name. So we'll call this SKS. And then we can include a class name, which is going to be the weapon class name that we give whenever the player purchases the item. So I know off the bat with FAS2, I believe that's the correct class name for an SKS. And then we're going to include a price. And let's say we'll make this 1,000. And then another thing that we can do is actually include a description. And we'll say this is a trusty SKS. And then if we want to just structure this a little bit differently, just to clean it up a bit, this. Okay, now that we have that structured like that, we can go ahead and actually add in another item now. And I believe there's an M24 in FAS, so we'll use that one as well. Go ahead and add in one more, but I don't really know any more off the top of my head, so I'm going to head in game real quick, go into weapons, FAS2, and then we'll do, for example, like the clock. So this is 20. This is trusty Glock 20. We can go ahead and add in more specific things to this, but for now that will work. Another thing is just make sure you add commas to everything just so you don't forget later on if you ever want to add in a field. So you can go ahead and add in anything you want here, such as a model, a use function, a custom check, user group access, yada yada yada, but we're just going to have the basics down here. So now that we have this table here, we're going to go ahead and save this file. And then I'm going to go into our menu now, and I'm going to use loop. So I'm going to loop over 4K VM pairs. And we'll take our table that we just put here, tutorialshop.item. And I'm actually going to replace VE with just something a bit more fitting, such as like item data. And now I can go ahead and actually just print item data dot. Now when I do dot, I'm indexing one of the values. So I could go ahead and do name. Then if I save this and open up the menu now, you can see in our console we have SKS M24 Glock 20. Or I could even write it like this and index it this way. And if I open up the menu again, you can now see we have the same exact results. I'm just writing it a different way. Okay, so with that, now we can go ahead and create some panels here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a local item panel. I'm going to say vgui.create. We're going to create a D panel. And since we're using docking, I'm just going to do item panel, and we're going to dock. We're going to dock to the top, meaning that this is going to essentially create a vertical list. Before in the scroll bar, I showed you using a Y position variable, and we were incrementing the Y position after each iteration of the loop. However, we're essentially doing the same thing, but just a bit easier with docking. So now if I go ahead and save this now, and we hop in game, you can see that we totally messed up, and there's some panels on the screen because I forgot to set a parent. That was an oopsie. So to do that, we're going to just set the parent to scroll. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do, so we're going to have to look at our mistakes the entire time here. That's okay. We learn. So now we got 3 panels here. You can kind of see them with the shadow there, but I don't like the spacing. So how to change that? We're going to do item panel. We do dock margin. We can get some spacing here. So we'll say local Y space equals, we can get the tutorial shop, get the height of that, and let's just say like 5% of the height. Now for the dock margin, it goes basically the argument, there's 4 arguments: the left, top, right, and bottom for spacing. So you can set margins on the left or the right or the top and the bottom. So the left will be 0, the top will be 0, the right will be 0, but the bottom will be Y space. Now if I go ahead and open this up now, you now see we have spacing that is way too much, so I'm going to reduce to like 0, 1, and now you can see we have that. I don't like the size of our panels, so I'm going to do item panel set tall, and then let's actually store the tutorial shop height. So we'll call this frame H equals tutorial shop menu get tall, and basically the same thing is written here, so we're just going to replace that with our variable now, and then we'll take the total height of the frame and let's just say like 0.1 maybe. So now if we open that up, now you can see we have these 3 items here. Okay, so if you remember earlier, I was able to print item data.name, and so this becomes really useful because if we go ahead and override the paint function now, we can draw out names of the items here. So I'm going to go ahead and create another font, which will just be a little bit smaller for our items. So let's go ahead and say maybe like 18. I don't know if that's what I want, but we'll try it out. Then we'll go here and we'll say draw.simple text. And I'm actually just going to copy this line here just for be a little bit faster. And then we're going to replace this with, let's do string.upper, or no need to do string. Let's do item data.name. And then we have that new font, which is now 18. So I'm going to replace this with 18. And then our X position, I'm actually going to have this be aligned to the left. And so I'm going to say we have like an indent or a margin of 5% of the width. And then the height, let's just say 0.1. And then since we're aligning to the left, I'm going to do text align left. Then if I go ahead and save this now, and we get an error. Why do we get an error? Oh, attempt to perform arithmetic on global W new value. It's because we need to specify the arguments for our paint. So now you can see we have our items here. And what I'm going to do now is actually go ahead and copy this here, which is just drawing out the background of the frame. And I'm going to include that on the panel so we have some background for the panels here. So now you can see we have SKS, M24, Glock 20. I'm going to change the positioning on the Y here. So now you can see we have our SKS. I feel like 5% might be too much, so let's do 2%. Now you can see we have that. Another thing is we don't really have any models or anything like that. So this is kind of a little bit too big for a menu, I think. I just feel like it's a bit large. We can go maybe even smaller. Something like that. I feel like that's a bit more appropriate here. Okay. Next part, what we want to do is we're going to need the description. So to add in the description, we have item data.name, but we have all these other fields that we can index now. So if I just go ahead and do dot description and we scoot this down maybe like 30% down, you can now see that the description is there. I'm going to do like 35. And now you can see that this shows out that description that we wrote out in the global table. Next thing I want to do is include the price. So to do the same thing here, we're just going to add let's say 20%, and then this will be price. And if we save that now, open that up, now you can see we have the price here. And unfortunately, if you have darker P, you can do darker P.format money like that and wrap the price in there. It just depends on the game mode that you're running. So now you can see we have the nice formatted money here. Or you can make your own function for it, but to make this agnostic for the moment, I'm just going to concatenate a $sign. So now you can see we have the $sign for our money there. Unfortunately, we don't have the commas. And now just to show that this isn't just repeat information, I'm going to make the M24 like 20,000. The Glock 20, we're going to make that 500. And then the SKS will make that like 450. And then open that up. And now you can see we have correct money here. One more thing that I want to do is actually add in a purchase button. So to do that, we're going to go and create a local purchase button. And we'll say vgui.create. So we're going to create a D button, which is going to be a child of the item panel. We're going to do the purchase button, and we could use docking for this. That might be the best thing. Let's try it with docking. Let's do dock right. So it's going to be the right of the panel. We'll do purchase button, set text. I don't want any text on this because we're going to override the paint function. Purchase button dot paint function height and we'll go into our table here and we'll create we'll create another thing here. We'll call this button. Call this purchase button, and let's just make this like really green, like that. Okay, so now if we go here, I'm going to go ahead and do surface.set draw color, and I'm going to take this here, and instead of indexing by the background, now that we have this new value here called purchase button, I can go ahead and place that there. I can do surface.drawRect to fill up the entire rectangle. And then if I save that now and we open up this, now you can see we have this big green button. It looks kind of ugly. It really does. So to change that, what we can do is change the width of it since we're docking to the right. So let's say set wide. How do I want to do this? Let's store the frame height as, the frame width. And we'll do like 10% maybe. Let's try that. Maybe a little bit bigger, like 20. Okay, now you can see that's nice and big. Next thing I want to do is change the margins of our docking. So let's go ahead and make a variable here called local margin space, and we'll say frame W times 0.01, and then we'll go purchase button, dock margin, and we'll say margin space. So on the left, actually we don't need any docking, margin on the left, but on the top we do, so we'll do margin space. On the right, we're going to need some margin space, and along with the bottom. So let's try that out now. Getting a script error. Oh, it didn't set. Whoopsie. Okay, so now you can see there's a little bit of like essentially padding. I'm going to increase that like 5%. Too much, sorry. Okay, that's an okay button right there. Now the next thing I want to do is go ahead and draw that simple text. And we'll go ahead and say purchase. and then we'll go ahead and take this here. Now that I realize this, since we're going to be making some form of shop, we're going to be using DarkRP. So I'm going to actually use the DarkRP functions just because I don't really have a money system in place other than DarkRP. And we're going to be using DarkRP's functions to add and subtract money. So I might as well just use DarkRP functions for formatting money here. And then go ahead and position the text here and this here, the text, and we'll do aligning everything on the center. Okay, if we go back in game now you can see we have the purchase here. Okay, looks good, looks good. Now what we need to do is actually add in some form of feedback for whenever you purchase or click on something, because I'm clicking right but nothing's really happening. And so to make something happen, we are going to go purchase button dot DoClick equals function. And now what we're doing here is we're overriding the DoClick function similar to how we override the paint function buttons. And so this is where networking gets involved. So what we need to do is go into our server-side file that we have not touched yet, and we're going to add in a network string. So we're going to do util.add network string, and we'll call this tutorial shop underscore purchase. Okay. Then what we're going to do on our client, whenever they click, we're going to do net.start. So we're starting this net message, and then we're going to do net dot write int, or we'll do write int, and we're going to send k, and we can set aside 32 bits if we need to. Bits or bytes, sorry, I don't really remember. And we're going to do net.send to server. And so now basically on the client, whenever they click the purchase button, we're going to be sending k. Why are we sending k? Because k, if I go ahead and hop into here now, and let's say we go lua underscore run print table, and we're going to print the table that we're looping over here, tutorial shop.items, tutorial shop.items, and you can see that there's 1, 2, and 3. So k, for each iteration, when it first starts off, k has the value of 1, and then it loops around again, so now k has the value of 2, and then it loops around again, k has the value of 3. And so with that, we can index certain values or items in the shop by using this number reference here. And so we don't need to send the name, the price, the class name of what they're trying to buy, because the client can manipulate that. And so the only thing that we can really trust is the fact that this table is going to be synced between the client and the server. So if they send the number 2, well, then we know that they're sending the M24, and we can get the price on the server that way. We do not want to trust the client by setting the price, because they can write any information they want whenever they are running client-side Lua. So to show you what I was talking about, I'm going to go ahead and do Lua underscore run, and I'm going to print, and then I'm going to do tutorial shop items, and then if I send like 1, for example, if I click on the first button and do the name, you can now see we get the SKS. If the client sends 2, or k has the value of 2, well, now we know that they're referencing the M24 and so on. If we do 3, they're referencing block 20. That's why we're sending k. So now what we need to do is on the server side, we need to do something whenever the server receives this. So we're just going to take this right here, and we're going to have callback, which is the function, and POI is going to be the player that sent the item. So what we're going to do is we're going to say a local ID equals net.read int 32. So since we wrote 32 down here, we're going to have to read 32. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say local item data equals ID. Then we're going to say if not item data, then return n. So if the client sends any number for some reason, like let's say they send 4, well, there's no 4th value in the table. We could actually say, hey, they might actually be cheating or doing something malicious if they're trying to send an ID that doesn't exist, or something just might be out of sync for whatever reason. So it's just nice to fall back and say, hey, we're not going to execute any code below if this item data doesn't exist. So now what we can do is we can say POI chat print. We can say attempting to purchase, then what are we going to attempt to purchase? Item data dot name. So now just to test that, we go into our tutorial shop now, and I click purchase. You can see attempting to purchase SKS, attempting to purchase M24, and Glock 20. So we now know that they are attempting to purchase items. So now there's a couple functions in DarkRP that we can use. So if I say local can afford equals POI, I think it's can afford, and then if we do item data dot price, we say if not can afford, then and we're going to return, and then we're going to say POI chat print you can't afford this item. Okay, so I have $18 million right now, so I'm going to go ahead and set an item to 20 million. So this is 200,000, 2 million, 20 million. Okay, so now if I open this up again, you can now see that we have this M24. If I click purchase on the SKS, nothing happens. Nothing happens in the Glock, but if I click purchase on the M24, you can't afford this item. So now that will stop this code from executing. However, since they can't afford it, such as the Glock or the SKS, it'll continue to run. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, if they can afford the item, then we're going to take the money first. So let's do POI and then add money. And unfortunately, this is kind of dumb, but this is how DarkRP is written. If you're going to take money, you're going to basically add negative money. Otherwise, if you just try to set DarkRP var, which I was at one point, and I found out this is a very bad thing to do, it will not save to the database immediately, that is. So you want to use add money, which will cause the money to actually get saved immediately. So that's something that I wish I would have known, but now you guys know. So now we can just do add money, and we're going to add the negative of item data dot price. And then so next thing we want to do is say POI give. And so this is the give function, which gives a player an item. So we have the class name, which is stored here. And so now we can index that. So how we do that is we're going to say give item data dot class name. Okay, and I think that might do it. If I just say chat print purchase successful, I will just say purchase successful. Okay, so now if I go into here, do I have a Glock on my guy? I don't. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go into our tutorial shop here, and I'm going to click purchase. You can see purchase success, the money went down, and next thing you know, Glock 20 pops into my hands. Okay, but there's one slight problem here. What if I try to purchase this Glock? See, successful, my money's going down, so that's definitely an issue. To fix that, we're going to look up this method here called as weapon. So what we can do is we can say local as weapon equals POI as weapon, and then we can do item data dot class name. Then we can say if has weapon, then and return POI chat print purchase failed. You already have this weapon. Okay, so now if I go into our menu again and I click purchase failed, you already have this weapon. I'm going to try to buy this M24. You can't afford this item, but I don't have an SKS, and it worked. If I try to buy the SKS again, you already have this weapon, and so it is not going to work. So that will basically conclude our shop system here. Just to give a quick recap of what's happening here, we have a global table full of all the items. We want to make sure that this is shared and synced up between the client and server. If they're out of sync, things will be very, very whack. And so there could be some form of mismatch there between the client and the server. So we want to make sure that this is synced. So to do that, you just want to put this in a shared file. We're looping over our items here, and we're sending K, which is the ID of the item. So each iteration K will be 1, then the next iteration will be 2 and 3, and then send that to the server to figure out which button they press. So if it was the first button, well, then we know that that's the SKS, and get all the data here, and we check to see if they have the weapon or if they can't afford it, and then we give it to them. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, make sure to comment them down below. I'll try to respond to every single one that I can, and I hope you learned something. Have a great evening. Bye bye.